Really is. There's a lot going on in our world. Have you noticed? Yeah. I don't know, maybe you have unplugged completely from all media. There's a lot of activity going on. And what I'm really clear about more than ever is that people who, like you, are making a time to set aside their life to grow, to expand, to learn, to heal, to transform, are the people that are making the world that we always talk about. Whether you are out there doing it outside in a very direct way, if you're a social worker or if you're a mailman and how you carry the mail and how you speak to your community and how you treat people is a particular thing that you do, or whether you are a physician and that you're raising the bar in terms of how the medical profession goes, or maybe you're just a teacher. And because of the work that you're doing in a community like this, you are able to be more compassionate. You're able to do things that were not done for you when you were coming up in the world. I am glad that I didn't have the teachers that my parents told me about. All that ruler nonsense. I mean, I had knuckles, knowing me as a child. But we're here in a community that is centered around the principle of love, first and foremost. So, yes, Agape moved into a new facility over the last 2 weeks. We're still in the process of closing out the 5700 Buckingham facility that you may have been to. If you walked in there now, you would not recognize it. The entire stage and everything is being torn down. The structure is being returned back into the way that we received it. And so we had our first service last week and at the Saban Theater. It was wonderful. We celebrated Reverend Michael's birthday. And so I was up a little extra early this morning because I wanted to make sure everything was going. So I was at the Saban Theater at 5:30 this morning, getting things ready and also preparing to be with you. And so when I was there, I was with Reverend Michael right before he stepped on stage for the Way of Meditation service, which you may know is our 7 a.m. service now. And he said, make sure that you tell Soul Center that I love them. Make sure that you give them my love. And I told them in advance that they're going to tell you that they love you too because you've made a difference in their life. So today, your love is already at Agape with Reverend Michael, supporting him in what he does because that's the relationship that we have. And so when we talk about relationship, the biggest and the thing that I'm clearest about in life is that we have to figure out how this relationship with life works. And so when I say life, I'm talking about life with a capital L. Same as when I talk about God with a capital G, or when I talk about the presence with a capital P. Because this thing that orchestrated creation, it had something within its intention that was us. Because if you look at mathematically, any people kind of like math or kind of dug science when they were a kid? 3 of you. Well, one of the classes that kicked my patootie in college was statistics. Oh, yeah. Oh, you too? Oh, so glad not to be alone. Well, one of the things that comes up when you look at numbers is you see how big the number is and how rare a human incarnation is. So, what do you mean human incarnation? The idea that you, in the perfect pattern, amongst all the things that could have been created with your DNA strands and born in the part of the country that you were born, that your parents met, that your parents did or didn't stay together long enough to contribute make any contribution to you, or maybe you were raised by uncles or aunts or grandparents, whatever the specific expression of life that was allowed for you to be forth, it's so specific. Like 1 in hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in order for you to come to pass. So you, in and of itself, must recognize your inherent beauty. You must recognize how valuable you are. That creation in and of itself, that Spirit said, I'm bringing forth Susan. I'm bringing forth Kathleen. I'm bringing forth Marianne, Robin, and Catherine, and Jeff. All of them are coming in. That is something for us to start with as a moment of like, wow. As a moment of awe. We're in a beach community. You guys love the ocean, don't you? You wouldn't live out here and pay what you pay if you didn't love the ocean. And when you stand at the edge of the ocean, can you imagine how many drops of water are in the ocean? You can kind of do it sometimes with like a teaspoon. You ever just like put a little teaspoon and just try to, you think that you're able to measure the medicine that goes in the jar and you're spilling it halfway down your wrist. But there are just all of the drops of water in the ocean and all of the people and all of the places that you could have been. But in all of that awe for the millions upon millions of possibilities, there is a law and an order to this universe. And human beings have been discovering this as they evolved. They started to discover things like the natural laws, that water does certain things, that water generally flows in a particular direction in most of the world, that gravity is actually a thing, and our bodies move in a particular way. We start inventing and developing different kind of contraptions using physics, even though we didn't have a name for it yet. We started to study the stars, and we started to see that there are distinct patterns everywhere. And then, as we started to study ourselves, we started to recognize that those patterns that are out there are also right here. That the patterns that are supporting the universe, there's another version of them that I also see in me. And as I'm able to come to an understanding of that, I also see that as I learn them and as I come to comprehend them, I'm able to, just like a sailor who raises their sail and puts it in a particular way, they can catch the wind, and so they can go in the direction that they want to go in. So as I learn the spiritual laws and the spiritual principles that govern the universe, as I learn that there are better ways to interact with my brothers and sisters on the journey, as I recognize that I have brothers and sisters on the journey, as I recognize that I'm not alone, that I'm not separate, that there is also something that is continually supporting me, I have a completely different experience of this thing called life. Has anybody noticed that for themselves? Let me hear. Yes. All right. So now, one of the things that we talk about when we start noticing things is, okay, but what do we do with what we've learned? There's a really big difference between actually having knowledge and actually utilizing it. So we go through phases, right, in cultures where certain words and certain meanings and things become more prominent. And for a long time, the idea of knowledge is power was presented. It was talked about in different circles, primarily as an idea of if you know more, you can do more, right? If I have an idea of things, if I have information, then because I have that information, then I have more opportunities, I have more access. There's a flaw in that idea, because it is not knowledge that gives power. Knowledge is only information. Knowledge is just knowing something. However, if you don't use what you know, if you don't apply the principles that you're learning in this community, then no matter how many times you come here, the situations and circumstances that you want to elevate, whether you want to change the world, whether you want to change the dynamics between you and your children, no matter what, if you're not using the knowledge and applying the knowledge that you have, you're not going to get any more of life. You cannot shift the current if you don't actually apply the rudder. Right? You can't change the direction you're going in if you don't actually change direction. If I say, I know that I can change direction and I'm driving straight ahead and there's a cliff in front of me, but I'm not going to apply change direction, what's going to happen? Going off the cliff. So the theme of the month has been forgiveness. How's that been working on you? It's one of the most powerful practices we have. And as Patricia shared earlier, She's been hearing some of the dialogue, and she's had the pleasure of you sharing with her the experience of you taking on forgiveness. And you've had some wonderful speakers here this week, and I happen to be bringing up the caboose. And I have a lot to say about forgiveness. Because my perspective in particular comes from the people who have had to endure. Because if you go through this world and you think that you don't have anything to forgive, first of all, we got to go ahead and rewire that. But also, if you don't realize the power that you have set aside because you will not take on forgiveness. It's almost like if you go fishing and you catch 20 fish, but you only take home 2. Whatever you are leaving on the table is infinite possibilities. You're leaving so many other possibilities on the table. And so with forgiveness as a path to freedom as our backdrop for our theme for the month, my topic today runs into this thusly, fancy word. Free to versus free from. Clearing the path. Because when I think about the path to freedom, imagine some of the neighborhoods that you've driven through that had a vacant lot. And generally on those vacant lots, somehow, some way, some of people's trash always ends up there. You know, sometimes there's old tires and there's rusted old parts of metal that you have no idea where it came from. There's a dead grass and weeds that are kind of growing up in the empty space. And it really looks like nothing can grow there. You look at the path to freedom, and for many of us, that's what the path looks like. We are not nurturing or watering our path. We're not really contributing to it in any kind of way. We think about forgiveness. We think about being free. But there's still so many responsibilities that I have. It's like I can't really focus on being free because I have a mortgage. I have rent to pay. I have children that I'm raising. I live in a world that has told me that if I don't have X, Y, and Z, then, I'm just not living life right. And the thing that we have to do is we have to deprogram a lot of that. So, there's a reading that we're reading today at Agape that Reverend Kathleen found from a wonderful spiritual teacher, Howard Thurman. And I can't do the whole reading today, but I want to present the principal idea of the reading. The principal idea of the reading is this: that the Creator assumed that you have everything within you to successfully and fulfill your soul's calling in this world. Now, this is a world that has war. This is a world that has violence. This is a world where many of us have experienced violence to our person. And yet, the Creator, Spirit, God, assumed that each of us had within us everything that we needed so that we would fulfill our soul's calling. Feels really big, right? It feels like suddenly all of my excuses fall away. Well, I've been dealing with racism. I've been dealing with sexism. I grew up in a Nazi-occupied Germany. I have a whole lot of reasons to explain why my life is what it is. My ancestors live on a reservation where the U.S. government plied them with alcohol, and they're dealing with addictions and related causes. I live in a school district where 5 miles away from me are better schools, but because of redlining, the people that look like me can't live in that community. There are all these different ways that we live in this world where it seems like we've been pulled away from what is possible. And while others may be having this completely different experience, there are a lot of people that can justly say that the world is not fair. Let's just go ahead and agree. Because no one ever said that the world was fair, let alone equitable, let alone this journey would be easy. What we're talking about when we talk about forgiveness, we are not talking about light work. But we are talking about light work. I'm going to say it again. We're not talking about light as in heavy. We're not talking about light as in breezy. But we are talking about that which requires illumination, light work. That which requires something to be revealed to us that we cannot see. That requires us to reveal a version of ourselves that we cannot see. Many of us only know our wounded parts. You know, like when somebody comes up to us and they tell us how beautiful we are, or what a wonderful parent we are, or how great we're doing on the job, all we hear is, I've got to do better. All we hear is all of the nasty things that people ever said about us when we were coming up. So many of us only hear those things, and our self-talk, what we say to ourselves, oh, excuse me, maybe it's just me, what I say to myself sometimes, right. For those of you that hadn't been around, sometimes when I'm around, I invite people to do what? Let me know you're with me. Now, here's the thing about forgiveness, and I'm hoping one of the teachers have said this week because I love a good rerun. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. Say that for me. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. One more time. All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. What do you mean all forgiveness is self-forgiveness? I'm going to tell you. But they did this to me. They encroached upon my person. They violated me sexually. They stole what belonged to me. These people are the ones you're telling me that begins with self-forgiveness? Yes. Because when you have this experience, you're not focused on an other. You are releasing the energy of your experience, not the date, time, hour, fact of the construct, but the energy that you are feeling of betrayal, of unworthiness, of lack of value, the pain that you're experiencing. I had a wonderful conversation with a friend the other night, and we were talking about road rage, and I told her, road rage is really about, wait for it, the idea that what we believe is ours has been encroached upon. So many of us pay a lot of attention to our cars and our vehicles. You know, we shine them up, we invest time in them. Many of us drive around in a car all day. And in the world that we live in, we really try to have our own, everybody wants their own little bit of space, like my own part of it. And so when you're driving on the highway and you're going here and there, and suddenly everything's just moving along, you have to slam on your brakes. How come we never jump immediately to, I'm so glad I didn't have an accident? Because generally what we do is we get mad at them for slamming on their brakes. We never talk to ourselves about following too close. And it's a way that our mind works because we think that what we have can be taken away from us. You really think we really process the experience of that as if someone's trying to take away our way of moving in the world. I was doing just fine until they snuck over into my lane. They didn't even wave. They didn't even say thank you. I try to wave and say thank you. Because I know sometimes I've cut a person or two off. But the whole idea is realizing exactly what I'm experiencing. And if I have an awareness actively as I move through my day, suddenly I can graduate to the next level of awareness, which always recognizes that it is actually not happening to me. I had an experience, but me is that which witnesses the experience. I can never be hurt, harmed, or endangered. No matter how many cars you steal from me, no matter how much property of mine you destroy, you can never hurt, harm, or abuse me. And so suddenly, even if I've invested time and money, blood, sweat, and tears, and all that into material items, I will never have my joy, my peace, or my livelihood, or my harmony expressing into existence taken away from me simply because of a car accident, or simply because somebody did something to me. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't very real things that are happening, and that on a psychological level we have to do the work that it takes to see things differently. Yes, both things are true, and the other part is, if you will recognize that both things are true, you can get back to freedom faster. You can get back to harmony faster. You can do the work to release the concepts and ideas of what you're experiencing and how you identify you with it. Very heavy things. And we want people to be sorry. We have no idea what they're going through or what's going on in their experience, because there have been moments where we've been doing our thing and we didn't realize that we were pushing out upon other people too, negating what their experience might be. This is just what it means to be in life, to be in community and move through the journey. So if that's the case, who do we forgive first? Ourselves. If you will start with yourself, then you remember that there is no other that can take any power away from or take power and have it over you. We talked about free from. We want a world that is free from war and violence. We want children to grow up in a world that is free from the possibility of abuse. We want a world where people are not starving, they're free from starvation. But I challenge you to focus more on the world that you wish to exist. That no matter what, I want the children to be free too. That their consciousness is, no matter what somebody puts in my way, I'm free to learn, I'm free to play, I'm free to grow, I'm free to do the experiment that is this thing called life, because it really is an experiment. Because none of us are the same, and none of our situations are the same, and all that copycat, cookie cutter kind of thinking that we try to place on other people, we know it doesn't work on us, and sometimes we make the mistake to do it to others, so forgive us first. Now, for those who might enter into the idea of having justification for not forgiving another person, we all have a level of awareness that there is somewhere in our life where we have not shown up our best. There is all of us, not a single person. The Christian teaching talks about the whole idea of there none are without sin. And it's less about sin. Your understanding of sin can be quickly shifted to simply understand that the teaching was always about missing the mark. That's all they ever talked about. It's been maligned and used and swung around with a free paintbrush. But the reality is, we're just talking about the times we missed the mark. We have an intention, we're shooting towards this to do this, but there are a lot of people throughout history that have tried to help and screwed it all up. You look at how people went to other countries and wanted to convert them to different religions, and what they really did to those people. And so, should the descendants of those people not justly feel a particular way about those who still represent that organization or those structures, whatever they are? But that person will never be free too if they are still in the energetic of, I've been abused, my people have been taken away from me, slavery, all of them. We don't forget that these things happen, but we energetically must reach an awareness that we don't forget, but we are not living based on those experiences. Do not allow your choice of how you navigate through the world to be based on the past failings of other human beings. You in this moment can hold accountable those who are living today to how they show up in the world. And we create the better world because we are all free too. You could put your favorite thing in a box to protect it. But if you put it into a box, you can actually never enjoy it. So you can protect children from this, and you can protect the endangered species. We're trying to rewrite the endangered species list after it's been so successful. You want to protect these things. But you really want to create a world where we're all free too. We're all free to fulfill our destiny. We're all free to love. We're all free to dance. We're all free to laugh and to sing. We want to create a world that's free too. And so when we talk about clearing the path, once we've taken all of these tires and all the things that happened to us when we were 13, and all the ways our mom didn't do this, all the ways our dad didn't do this, all the horrible things that we experienced, once we clear them out, we have a pathway of infinite possibilities, great joy, great beauty, great love that is before us. Yes. But we have to start where? With ourselves. And if you are willing to just consider it, we already know that it's heavy lifting. If you're willing to consider it, to just hold the space for a moment, I guarantee you that the next moment and the next moment and the next moment will be easier. Not simple. Human beings are very complex. But I stand with the Creator, and I know that you do, that there is an assumption that you have everything you need within you, within your community, within Soul Center, within Reverend Key, with Reverend Michael, with all of the wonderful teachers in this world that we now get to invite into our consciousness to truly have a world where we are free to be the fullest expression of the divine that we have ever known. Woo! Yes? Yes? So with that, I do just want to speak a short prayer as we wrap our consciousness around the word that has come forth today. So if you'll turn within for me and simply join me in an awareness of deep and abiding gratitude. Deep and abiding gratitude for love, for life, for joy, for peace, for everything that has unfolded. For this living presence, which is God. That this word that has been spoken, that our hearts are fertile ground, that which is for us, we take with us, and that which isn't, we just release it. We take the word that is for us and we bring it in, and we don't do I wish so-and-so was here. No, we are grateful that we were here to hear this word. That we were here to hear that which serves our awareness. And I just speak a blessing knowing that it may click Tuesday, it may click Friday, it may click a month from now, but the freedom to be the fullest expression of our lives is at hand now. Blessing anyone who is on our heart or mind, whether they are dealing with a mental, physical ailment, whether they are just moving through the world and we want the highest and best from them, whatever the struggles, we liberate everyone in our own consciousness now. We don't identify them with shortcomings or disease or maladies. No, we know the highest and best for them. That is what we see. That is what we know. That is what we thank God for as the reality of our life. I simply know that it is so now. I release this word and call it done. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody take a deep breath. So our ushers are going to come forward in just a moment. This is our time of giving. Soul Center is an amazing community that is growing. Again, I started at the beginning of the service saying, hearing Patricia talk about summer lights. And that's a real thing in communities. People are traveling and doing things, but the business of the community continues. What it takes in rent here, what it takes for the resources to continue to grow a community, it's supported by the community itself. The principle that we talk about is circulation. Give, and it shall be given unto you is one of the lines in the scripture. Another way to recognize it is a sowing of a seed. Every time you give to Soul Center, you're giving to something that will grow beyond you. Not simply beyond your years, beyond even your ever knowing. You don't know the ways that Soul Center is helping communities. You don't know how people's lives are being changed because they're live streaming right now, or this video will be up on YouTube and they will be blessed by this. That is what you are supporting. And so as you sow your seed, sow it in joy, sow it